The news from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
The news at 6 comes to you with the compliments of Kentucky Fried Chicken and KFC. With the news at this time, I'm Dennis Chabrol. Good evening. First, the highlights. Former Finance Minister Winston Jordan was today granted $3 million bail on charge of misconduct in public office. Opposition leader Joseph Harman has sought to justify why he should remain as opposition leader. 3 civil society organizations are calling on the president to delay a parliamentary vote on the Natural Resource Fund bill scheduled for tomorrow. A 36-year-old Linden man is hospitalized after leading police in a high-speed chase and found with an unlicensed gun and live rounds. In the Caribbean, the main opposition Democratic Labour Party in Barbados has blamed the non-caring Prime Minister Mia Mottley for calling a snap general election in the midst of a pandemic and urged supporters to boot the ruling Barbados Labour Party out of office in January 19. Internationally, there is widespread criticism of Russia's Supreme Court ordering the closure of the International Memorial, Russia's oldest human rights group. The details of these and other stories in a moment.
After a hard day's work, a lime at the workplace would be great, and even greater and better with KFC, with a wide choice of finger-licking meals in a wide range of sizes. Could be a birthday celebration or promotion, or a lime for no reason at all. Any lime, anytime, anywhere is better and tastier with a delicious meal from any of KFC's 9 locations, including the Amazonia Mall at Providence, open now from 9 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. KFC.
It's finger-licking good.
And now the news in detail. Former Finance Minister under a Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change APNU-AFC government Winston Murray today appeared in court on the charge of misconduct in public office. He was granted a $3 million bail by Chief Magistrate Anne McLennan and ordered to return to court on January 14. The charge states that while being Minister of Finance and the concerned Minister for the National Industrial and Commercial Investments Limited, he sold a prime property to BK International for $20 million, which carried the time of market value of $5 billion that was grossly undervalued. The prosecution's case says that the transaction amounted to an abuse of the public's trust and without reasonable excuse or justification. His defense lawyer, Royce Ford, says that the decisions had been taken by Nissel and the cabinet, and so the minister did not commit a crime.
The PPP's attempt to muzzle people who are prepared to speak out against the atrocities that are taking place in this country. Minister Jordan, you know, of course, is an outspoken critic about the economic policies of this country. And so this charge, just like the wanted bulletin that is out against report work, all of these are aimed at silencing dissent. Dissent is something which is guaranteed under our Constitution, and that is a right which Mr. Jordan has.
After that process, Mr. Jordan would simply have been performing an administrative function by which he would have been signing and vesting order. The cabinet decision would have authorized the sale and the circumstances and conditions of the sale as a consequence of receiving a report and a documentation and a memorandum from Nissel itself outlining those circumstances. So at no time whatsoever Mr. Winston Jordan would have been acted solo, or would he have embarked on a mission or a part of his own.
The former finance minister says he fears nothing and he's confident that the charges will fail.
It's very unfortunate because I've given my life to this country at all levels, local and international and regionally, and I've never turned around. And I've worked with all different administrations, and I see this more political persecution, which is sad development.
The former finance minister is a harsh critic of the government. Opposition leader Joseph Harmon, who is part of the former minister's legal team, says the charge is an attempt by the governing PPP to muzzle dissenting voices. Mr. Jordan is also represented by attorney at law and leader of the AFC, Kemra Jamjudan, as well as attorneys Darren Wade and Member of Parliament Royce Ford. Opposition leader Mr. Joseph Harmon on Tuesday sought to justify why he should remain in that post. He says that as opposition leader he represents a larger bloc of more than 200,000 Guyanese voters instead of the estimated 1,700 delegates who voted in the party's recent internal elections. Mr. Aubrey Norton was elected PNCR leader.
The leader of the opposition is representative of over 218,000 persons who went to the electorate and voted. And so that is my mandate. The mandate of the leader of the PNC is a separate mandate altogether. I believe that the two positions that we should work together very closely, but they are two separate positions altogether.
However, Mr. Harmon says he will be prepared to step down from the post of opposition leader if this will help the PNCR to confront the governing People's Progressive Party. He says this was in response to the question about whether the majority of the executive votes for this to be done.
If in fact my situation, my sitting there, makes it difficult for the members of parliament to be able to challenge the PPP and to confront them at every level, then certainly I will consider it. So it is a matter though of our strength in the National Assembly, our ability to confront the PPP on their parliamentary agenda. That is what is important.
Mr. Harmon says the opposition leader and the PNCR should work very closely. Previously co-opted on the PNCR's last executive when Mr. David Granger had been party leader. Mr. Harmon says that he can be co-opted again or he can rely on information from other PNCR executive members in taking positions to the National Assembly.
Invariably, the leader of the opposition is asked to be co-opted as a member, or he can identify a person, a member of parliament, who can be so co-opted so that the members of parliament are kept informed. At this stage, we have the chief whip, who is the person that really keeps us in line, is a member of the central executive. And several other MPs are members of the central executive. So I do not see a problem with respect to the information which comes from the party that will inform the decisions which are made at the level of the parliament.
Opposition leader Joseph Harmon. 3 non-governmental organizations have intensified pressure on the government not to go ahead with debating the new Natural Resource Fund law. The Trade Union Congress, Transparency Institute of Guyana, and Article 13, a civil society group formed to promote inclusionary and participatory governance, have publicly called on the government to delay a parliamentary vote on the Natural Resource Fund bill scheduled for this Wednesday. The grouping wants the Natural Resource Fund bill to be referred to a select committee of the National Assembly to allow members of the public to make recommendations. The joint statement by the group says it considers it entirely unreasonable, even in the best of circumstances, for Guyanese and their parliamentary representatives to have just 8 working days to consider the text and implications of undoubtedly the most significant piece of legislation of the PPPC administration. The bill was gazetted on December 15 and tabled in the National Assembly on December 16. The organizations say there is no sufficient time to consider the full extent of the bill. They say that the oversight provisions of the Natural Resources Fund Act passed by the APNU-AFC government have been dismantled. They say they also find it contentious that the bill allows the government easy access to spend from the fund and emergency purposes. The civil society grouping says the bill places the monies in the fund in the hands of a board of directors appointed by the president and that the board reports to the Minister of Finance. The Trades Union Congress Article 13 and the Transparency Institute of Guyana also note that a Public Accountability and Oversight Committee comprising of 9 persons provides vaguely for non-governmental oversight of the fund. They say the fund will be operationally managed by the Bank of Guyana, whose governor is also appointed by the president. President Irfan Ali today sought to justify his government pressing forward with amendments to the Natural Resources Fund bill in the face of calls for a hold on the parliamentary vote. President Ali says the existing law is not constitutional since it was passed by a government that had been defeated in a no-confidence motion.
The old bill is unconstitutional and illegitimate. We seem to forget that this bill was passed by the Parliament in January 2019 after the no-confidence motion had been approved. So the bill has no legitimacy. The bill has no legitimacy. It was passed in Parliament after the no-confidence. So it's unconstitutional. That is the first thing.
The president says the government made a promise on the campaign trail to amend the bill, and the government is keeping that promise. He says there are also fatal flaws in the act which necessitate changes.
Before the act could have been made operational. Now, what are these fatal flaws that the act had inside? The governance structure. Let us start with the governance structure. It was severely deficient, with no governing body, such as a board of directors. The Santiago Principles require a governing body. So let's start from there. There was no governing body, as is required by the Santiago Principles.
In the amendments, President Ali pointed out that the finance minister's powers will be reduced and given to the board of directors.
We have currently 741 active cases across Guyana. And of those cases, we have 32. We have currently 700.
That's Health Minister Frank Anthony telling us now about the latest COVID situation in Guyana. He says the health ministry is saying there is a decline in COVID cases. There are still serious cases, nevertheless, of the viral disease that are causing persons to be hospitalized. Minister of Health Anthony detailed the data during his COVID update for today.
We have currently 741 active cases across Guyana. And of those cases, we have 32 persons who are currently in a hospital, with 22 of them being at the Ocean View Hospital. Of the persons hospitalized at Ocean View, we have 7 of them in the ICU. Currently, overall, we have 17 patients that require oxygen, so it shows that they still have a severe form of COVID, and we all have to be taking the precautions.
That's Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony. The death toll remains at 1,050 persons. The ministry says it has partially vaccinated 410,181 persons as of Monday, December 26, and 293,601 adults are fully vaccinated. There are 30,214 children ages 12 to 17 years old partially vaccinated, and 21,527 are fully vaccinated. Today, 10,708 booster shots have been administered. A new and United Guyana ANUG is accusing the People's Progressive Parties of having a policy that is aimed at getting rid of necessary safeguards for proper governance. Describing this as an alarming trend, ANUG says the PPP is marginalizing Guyanese who are not its supporters. ANUG says the Irfan Ali-led administration is favoring its supporters while shaping bodies that have been established by law to easily access state resources to pursue a divisive agenda. That small political party is blaming the PPP administration for using its parliamentary majority to consolidate its power and streamline its unobstructed access to state funds. At the same time, ANUG says the government is sidelining any non-PPP Guyanese from access to information which will enable scrutiny of its management of the country and its resources. It says the government used their majority in Parliament to authorize an increase in the amount of money it may borrow. It then began to spend large sums of money on ad hoc and poorly monitored cash handouts and inadequately audited and poorly monitored contract awards. According to ANUG, this expenditure can only have been funded by increased borrowing, and it is likely that borrowing was done against the collateral of the Petroleum Fund. ANUG says most recently the government has indicated its intention to use its majority in Parliament to amend the petroleum legislation by removing any meaningful safeguard against its unrestricted access to the oil fund. The party forecasts that the spending spree will now ramp up. The party accused the government of failing to address the concerns of public servants and consulting with unions, but instead punishing protesting public servants. A 36-year-old Linden man led police in a high-speed chase this morning in the Manning town before crashing his car and was arrested for the alleged possession of unlicensed gun and ammunition. Police say the now hospitalized man on the police guard at the Mackenzie Hospital complex was acting suspiciously while patrol ranks were responding to a complaint of noise nuisance where a private party was being held. Police say two men were observed some 15 feet away and quickly boarded a car and sped off. The police say they followed and it turned into a high-speed chase. The car stopped briefly and the second man got off and made good his escape as the chase continued. Police searched the vehicle after it crashed and found the 9mm weapon and 11 live matching rounds. In the region, police are trying to determine if 100 persons who were on board a pleasure boat in Trinidad on Boxing Day breached the public health regulations. According to the Trinidad Guardian News, the group included the vessel's owner. They were questioned by police and later released on Sunday night. The organizer of the event is said to be the son of a government minister. Trinidad and Tobago police say that between 5:30 p.m. and 9:30 p.m. on Sunday, officers were told that there was an event taking place on the vessel named Ocean Pelican. Police say that the owner and 100 other persons were all detained, processed, and released. Police say they have since asked the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions to advise whether there were any breaches of the public health regulations. The chairman of the St. Lucia COVID-19 Management Center, Cletus Springer, is warning of a fifth wave of the coronavirus pandemic. He says that St. Lucians should not be surprised at the news because they had been forewarned. In a Facebook page post, he says that the month of December is one of heightened social activity and international travel. He stated that daily updates over the past week show evidence of a dramatic upward trend across all indicators. Latest figures released by the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Elderly Affairs on Monday showed that 38 new cases of the COVID-19 had been recorded from a total of 345 samples which were collected in December 25 and 26. Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley says she'll be involving opposition leader Joseph Atherley to work out ways of ensuring that Barbadians can vote safely despite the coronavirus. Barbadians will go to the polls on January 19 in a snap election ahead of 2023.
It is my intention to have meetings convened of the Electoral and Boundaries Commission and the COVID Cabinet Subcommittee so that they may advise how best we structure the actual voting process to reflect an appreciation of the realities of COVID in our midst. I will also ensure that the leader of the opposition and myself are fully briefed after these meetings and that we can update you in a matter of days on any agreed upon changes with respect to simplifying the conduct of elections in this environment.
Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley. Parliament was dissolved yesterday immediately to make way for the election. And still in Barbados, the main opposition Democratic Labour Party has blamed non-caring Prime Minister Mill Motley for calling a snap general election in the midst of a pandemic. The DLP has urged supporters to boot the ruling Barbados Labour Party out of office on January 19. Motley, in a radio and television broadcast on Monday night, announced that nomination day will be on January 3 and that the polls were being held 18 months before her first term in office is due to end. She says it is important for a united Barbados to face the new year and blamed what she termed the silly season for Barbadians being divided on the future socio-economic development of the island. But in a statement, the DLP, which was swept out of office in 2018 by a 13-0 margin, described the move towards calling a snap election as a dark day for the country. She said that it is clear that the government of the day has succumbed to feelings of panic and that the nation's first call, which is its people's safety, has been set aside to pursue selfish ends, which expose people to great harm and possible deaths. That's the end of the local and regional news. We now go to the BBC World Service for the latest bulletin of international news.
Hello, I'm Debbie Russ with the BBC News. There's been widespread criticism of the decision by Russia's Supreme Court to close Memorial International, the country's most prominent rights organisation. The group was set up more than 30 years ago to document abuses committed under communist rule. It was shut down for violating the law on those considered foreign agents. Grant Ferret reports.
The United States and its allies have been swift and unstinting in their condemnation of the court ruling in Moscow. The US ambassador said the banning of Memorial was a blatant attempt not only to suppress freedom of expression, but also to erase history. The French foreign minister described the ruling as deeply worrying. Germany said it was incomprehensible. Memorial was set up 3 decades ago by, among others, the Nobel laureate Andrei Sakharov to document abuses committed under communist rule in the Soviet Union.
The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has called for a ban on arms sales to the military in Myanmar following an attack that killed more than 30 civilians last week. Mr. Blinken said the Burmese military had to be held accountable. The charity Save the Children has confirmed that the bodies of 2 of its staff members were among those found in a burned-out vehicle. A group of Afghan women have held a protest in the capital, Kabul, demanding an end to what they say is the killing and torture by the Taliban of former civil servants and soldiers. They also called for fair treatment for women. Here's our South Asia editor, Lipika Pelham.
About 50 women gathered near a mosque and they sort of then marched through the streets of Kabul. And I think they managed to go about a few hundred meters when Taliban stopped them. And so they stopped and women gathered, and the social media pictures, as you can see, they're incredibly brave. They're not wearing the full hijab. They're wearing kind of, barely covering their head. You can see their hair, and they're holding placards and they're saying that, we will, basically the message is that we cannot, we will not be quiet. We will not be silenced.
Lipika Pelham reporting. Sudanese officials say at least 31 miners were killed when a rudimentary gold mine collapsed in the centre of the country. 8 others are still missing. David Bamford reports.
The collapse occurred at an unofficial mine near the town of Nahud in West Kordofan province, southwest of the capital Khartoum. It's the second collapse this year. In January, 4 miners died in the same location. Sudan is one of the world's poorest countries, and around 2 million people tried their luck at gold mining with little training, equipment or security. They account for about 80% of the country's total gold production, but the mines are ramshackle and unsupervised, and deadly accidents are inevitable.
David Bamford reporting. You're listening to the latest world news from the BBC. Strikes have been taking place in eastern towns of the Democratic Republic of Congo, sparked by reports of a new security accord under which police from Rwanda would be allowed to operate in the region. Schools, shops, markets and petrol stations stayed closed in South Kivu province. Rwanda has denied there are plans to deploy Rwandan personnel on Congolese soil. Bangladesh has begun giving COVID booster shots after detecting 2 cases of the highly contagious Omicron variant in cricketers returning from Zimbabwe this month. They're being offered initially to frontline workers and people over 60. The Bolivian armed forces have airlifted a family to safety after they were found stranded by floodwater and surrounded by large crocodiles. An official said the group of 5 were lost after they left their flooded home by canoe in the hard-hit Santa Cruz region. At least 15 people have died since parts of Bolivia were left underwater. A conservation team in the US state of Virginia has opened a copper box of artefacts that had remained undisturbed for 130 years. The container was found in the base of a statue of the Civil War-era Confederate General Robert E. Lee. The statue was removed in September in the wake of protests against it following the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. This was the moment Kate Ridgway, one of the researchers, opened the container.
Thank you. Watch out for that. Okay, folks, everybody ready? Okay, so we're pulling out the metals first because they're on top. Some of the stuff we sort of understand. We know there were some mini balls in here. There does appear to be the piece of wood that had the bullet stuck in it right here on top.
Other items included newspaper articles, coins, books, buttons and ammunition from the American Civil War. That's the latest BBC News.
That's the end of the news.
After a hard day's work, delicious comfort food is all we crave for. There at KFC, they've got you covered with a wide choice of delicious, finger-licking good meals from any of their 9 locations, including the Amazonia Mall at Providence. And there are 6 drive-through locations for your convenience. Their 11 herbs and spices are sure to blow those post-work vibes away every time. It's the perfect way to end a hard day. KFC.
It's finger-licking good.
Now to end the news, a recap of the highlights. At this hour, we told you that former Finance Minister Winston Jordan was granted a $3 million bail on charges of misconduct in public office. Opposition leader Joseph Harmon has sought to justify why he should remain as opposition leader. 3 civil society organizations are calling on the president to delay a parliamentary vote on the Natural Resource Fund bill scheduled for tomorrow. And we also told you this hour that a 36-year-old Linden man is hospitalized after leading police in a high-speed chase and found with an unlicensed gun and live rounds. In the region, the main opposition Democratic Labour Party in Barbados has blamed the non-caring Prime Minister Mia Mottley for calling a snap general election in the midst of a pandemic and urged supporters to boot the ruling Barbados Labour Party out of office on January 19. Internationally, there is widespread criticism of Russia's Supreme Court ordering the closure of the International Memorial, Russia's oldest human rights group. That's the end of the news, which came to you with the compliments of Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.
The Board of Directors, management and staff of News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM
would like to extend our gratitude to the following companies
for being a part of our 12 Days of Christmas promotion:
Giftland Mall,
Giftland Office Max,
Food Max Superstore,
Giftland Electronics Store,
Jade's Walk,
Pinnacle Business Service,
Exclusive Dress to Impress,
Polo Tropical,
Church's Chicken,
Dairy Queen,
and Scene.
Thank you for putting smiles on the faces of all our winners.
And we look forward to working with you in the new year.
A very Merry Guyanese Christmas to you, your wonderful staff, and their families.
And may the new year bring you blessings beyond your expectations.